Fun.
Hey, hello. I am Rick Bizio. Welcome back to the Educated Franchisees educational series on FDDs. This is part six of the final one. And I'm the author of The Educated Franchisee and a franchise coach. I work with people who want to become franchisees and try to provide some education, help them make smarter decisions. And we're honored to have Nancy Leonard on. She stuck with us all the way to the sixth one. Thank you very much.
It's been fun. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Nancy is the principal for Leonard and Associates, been involved in franchise law for a quarter century and works exclusively with franchisees, which is pretty unusual again in the world of franchising. So a great resource, and we're happy to have you. So we have saved item 19 for the final section. And so item 19, I think we talked about earlier, we happen to own a website called the FDD Exchange. So people go onto the FDD Exchange and we'll see them go on the FDD Exchange. Immediately they're scanning to item 19 because they want to know how much money can I make, right?
Yeah.
And they scan to it and they're trying to collect income information to see which opportunity is the best. What do you think of that strategy?
Oh, I think it's horrible. Honestly,
Me too.
it's totally understandable. I totally get it. Everybody wants to know, what can I make? And so let's talk about what item 19 is first. It's called a financial performance representation, or FPR. What it really is an earnings claim.
Yep.
It's not required to be disclosed. You don't have to have one as a franchisor. And actually, 10 years ago, when I was writing FDDs, it was the thought not to have them. If you were a startup franchisor, it was better not to have them. That changed. And now the thought is that you're not going to be competitive if you don't have one as a franchisor. So most FDDs do have some sort of item 19 disclosure, even if they have no franchisees in the system yet. They'll have a corporate FPR. So item 19 disclosure, which is completely meaningless. I mean, I have to say, because what happens, it's like what happens at those corporate locations doesn't have any bearing on what's going to happen when you open your franchise. For many, 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 many reasons, not the least of which is the fact that you're going to be paying royalties and marketing fund fees and other fees, along with the upfront franchise fee, which the franchisor never had to pay in their corporate locations. So what they made is going to be very different than what you are. Plus, your marketing skills, your ability to sell, the services, the products, whatever it is. No one can tell you how good you are at that. No one can say that. And your territory is going to be unique. And no one knows how receptive that product or service is going to be in your particular territory. So for all of those reasons, to me, item 19, which everybody, every single franchisee or prospective franchisee wants to look at, as you said, as the first thing, is pretty meaningless. And on top of that, what I think 99% of the people looking at item 19 don't realize is that no one's audited those numbers. They are franchisor supplied numbers. So we're relying on them. Item 19 happens to be probably the number one area of law in franchising that is the product of lawsuits, in which there are lawsuits over misrepresentation and claims of fraud over the item 19 disclosures. But everybody wants to look at it. When I talk to them, I say to them, I know you've looked at item 19, even if you haven't looked at the other 23 items, I'm going to tell you to pretty much ignore it because the numbers there aren't audited. And they're shocked when I say that the numbers aren't audited. And even if you're in a registration state, those examiners aren't auditing those numbers. They're looking to make sure that the item 19 is compliant with what's required under those NASA guidelines, the book that I've been holding up all along, but they're not actually auditing those numbers.
I think though, when you look at different kinds of, there's a variety of different types of disclosures, right? When it comes to item 19, some provide no information, in which case there's the 2 template paragraphs. We don't do it. We don't talk about it. Then there's some that are the prospective P&L, say if you had a business and you might make this, which are irrelevant. In the franchisor location, not a whole lot of good information. But sometimes, and quite often, you'll see franchisors that have 100 franchisees, and they will give gross sales averages. They'll say, their top 25% of franchisees have this as their gross sales average, middle, bottom, and they'll say, here are the averages. And it's not a full P&L. It just kind of gives you a starting point, after which you go and you start talking to franchisees. Like we've said before, you really build a P&L by talking to franchisees, don't you?
To me, the best way to find out what you can make in a franchise system as a franchisee goes back to what we've been saying through this entire time that we've been talking today. And that is, go talk to franchisees in the system and ask them that question. It's one of my top 10 that I list in my blog post that I mentioned earlier, the top 10 questions to ask existing franchisees. Ask them how much they're making. Ask them if they would do this all over again if they had that option. Follow up with why yes or why no. Sometimes you can make a fortune and they hate it.
Yeah.
And I can name a system in my head, I won't say it out loud, in which that's the case, where the franchisees do very well financially, but they hate it. They hate the franchisor, they hate the control that's being exercised, and they would never do it again if they had that option, knowing what they know. But they make money. And sometimes it's the opposite. They don't make a lot of money, but they love it. So, those are really important questions to be asking, and only the other franchisees can answer those questions. And I think item 19 is not the answer to whether this is a good franchise for you or not.
Absolutely. So, shameless plug. In my book.
Oh, it's sitting right there. I could see it the whole time. It's there.
Yes, franchisee.
Good job.
but here's the deal, okay? I have an entire chapter in the book that talks about how do you interview franchisees in order to effectively extract information that allows you to build an accurate P&L, as accurate as possible, given the fact that none of us have crystal balls, right? And there's a science to it. This is the thing that people need to understand, is you're not going to get it. There's no shortcuts in the FDD. There's a science to building a P&L. And if you do it right, there's no reason that you can't know what the norms are from a financial point of view. You just need to be willing to do the work, ask the questions, and do it in a smart way that allows you to extract information and talk to enough franchisees that you figure out what the norms are. Not the only ones they want you to talk to. I have another chapter on which ones to talk to. You need a variety of different types of franchisees, younger, older, one more successful, less successful, some random ones. So there's different ways to do it, but I want to make sure you can understand the financials. You're just not going to get it from item 19.
No, exactly.
Just a little bit of a starting point, maybe.
And I think it's important, like you said, to have a pro forma done, to have some projection done by someone who can advise and who knows how to do that in a franchise context.
Yeah, absolutely. Good deal. Let's go to the next one. Item 20. I like item 20. That's one of my favorites personally. What do you think?
I like item 20 as well. I think it's very, very important. I have a chart.
Okay, just so you know, everyone, if you don't have an FD in front of you, it's called outlets and franchisee information. Okay, it's 5 tables.
Exactly.
It helps you how many have opened, how many have closed, where they've gone, how many were resold over the last 3 years, how many were abandoned. It's a pretty. I like that chat. I like
it's very good. So it like you said, it talks about in the charts, which they call tables. That how many franchised, how many company owned, how many total outlets at the start of the year, at the end of the year, what's the net change? That's table 1. Table 2 is transfers of outlets from franchisees to new owners. Isn't that very telling? I mean, honestly, that's a good information to know as somebody investing in a franchise, like how many have been sold and maybe why are they being sold?
But not only that, with an older system, I want to see resales. I'd rather see resales than closures. Resales means it's healthy after 10 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a normal part of the process.
Yep. Table number 3 is the status of the franchise outlets for the years, and it's usually a 3-year period of time. And so it'll say the state, it'll say the year, outlets at the start of the year, outlets opened, terminations, non-renewals, reacquired by the franchisor, which is also a very interesting category, ceased operations, other reasons, when outlets at the end of the year. Again, very informative tables that tell you an awful lot of information that I think is of value to anybody looking to invest. And I think the important takeaway is from all of our conversation today is that this is an investment of money. This is not just buying a job. This is an investment of money and an investment into a business. Table 4 is status of company-owned outlets, again, for the same 3-year period of time. By state, outlets at the start of the year, outlets opened, outlets reacquired from the franchisee, outlets closed, outlets sold to a franchisee, outlets at the end of the year. And again, very, very telling, and I think very important for any prospective franchisee to look at. And table 5, which is projected openings, which is going to say this is how many.
Irrelevant.
What's that?
It's irrelevant.
Well, it is and it isn't. It is, you know what? If they're saying and they're a brand new franchise, and you're going to be the first franchisee, and they're listing that they're going to sell 300 by the end of the year, I'd walk away. That's pretty scary. So,
They don't know.
They doesn't mean it's going to happen, but if you're that aggressive in your approach, do you really want to be a franchisee in that system? How are they going to support you?
Yeah, that's always a good question. Are they growing too quick? That's possible.
Exactly. And I know some that did that.
Yeah, we all do. Absolutely.
Right.
I think these tables have been improved. Prior to 2008, the tables weren't particularly good because there was ways to manipulate the numbers. So the way it's done now, you can actually cross-reference the numbers pretty well. When you look at like corporate reacquisitions in table 3, you can cross-reference that to table 4.
Exactly.
And the numbers got to add up.
They should add up, exactly.
They often don't. So it's one of those things you have to really look at. But I like those tables, and I think they're more important than item 19 personally.
I do too. I 100% agree. It's more important than item.
Yeah. Good deal. Anything else on that, or should we go to item 21, which I think is probably pretty short also?
Yeah, item 21. So what item 21 is important to know is that it basically says
it's financial statements, so everybody knows. This is audited financial statements of the franchisor. These are not financial statements of franchisees and how much money they're making.
Right. So item 21 is important because there's an exhibit to it. The exhibit is what's important. Item 21 itself isn't going to say much of anything, but as you said, it's the financial statements. And just for the audience listening, the first year of with a brand new franchise system, their first year of selling franchises, all they have to have under federal law is an opening balance sheet. It doesn't have to be audited. It's just an opening balance sheet. In year 2, it must be an audited opening balance sheet. By year 3, it must be full audited financial statements. These are very important. And when we talk about exhibits in about 2 minutes, I'll talk about why that one is very important.
Absolutely. So when you look at item 21, you'll see basically nothing in it, but It does refer to an exhibit, and the exhibit's important. So the next one is item 22, which is contracts, which is, I think, very similar in many ways. That's all found in the exhibits.
Yeah, basically, it's just referring back to the attachments, which are the exhibits.
Absolutely. And then item 23 is the receipt. Yeah. And the number one question I get from people is, should I sign this? What am I signing? Is there an obligation?
No. So the answer to that is every franchisor wants to have documentation that you received this FDD. And so they require, and the federal law requires that you sign a receipt. You keep a copy, they keep a copy, and it's evidence of the date that you received it. Remember, we talked at the very beginning in the first part about that timeline, that's 14 calendar days, that a franchisor must provide that to you as a minimum. We talked about that you and I both think that it should be provided much earlier than that. Right. And certainly that a franchisee can take much longer than that. But this is evidence of the dates that it's been provided and that it was provided. So it benefits the franchisor, and it's also record for you.
Yeah, and historically it was a physical document. There were 2 pieces of paper. You sent one to them. You kept one. Today they're almost always done electronically. You sign electronically. They send you an email.
Exactly.
And you have a record. So
yeah, usually DocuSign. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the exhibits. And we can spend an entire 6 sessions more on that, but I don't want to get into that level of detail. Talk to me generally what the exhibits are and kind of the highlights.
So the exhibits will be per item 22 that we just glossed over, every contract that you're going to be required as a franchisee to sign. So that's the franchise agreement. If there's a development agreement for multi-units, that'll be a template of that will be in there, a template of the franchise agreement. If there's a software license agreement or any other kinds of non-compete agreement, anything that you're going to be required to sign, they are required to be in the exhibits to the FDD. In addition, we talked already about this, the list of all franchisees and former franchisees will be in the exhibits.
Yep.
And they are there with current, if it's a current franchisee, that has to have current contact information for those franchisees in there. That's there so you can call them. And we've been talking about that and encouraging you to do that. And that's what they're there for. So you can call anybody that you want, not just those that the franchisor wants you to talk to. And the financial statements of the franchisor. And if they've been around for more than 2 years, they will be audited financial statements. And they are very important because you want to be involved with a franchisor that is financially strong enough to support the system they have in place and the growth that they're expecting in the future. And I've been involved, I was in-house at Nutrisystem when they went into bankruptcy. And they validated well when you talk to franchisees, because as I mentioned earlier, many of them made millions. But nonetheless, anybody looking at their financials of the franchisor, the audited financials, could see that they were weak and they went into bankruptcy. And in a very short time afterwards, every one of those franchisees was out of business.
Yeah.
So it's not a good situation when a franchisor goes into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so it's important to look at those audited financial statements or have an accountant that you're comfortable with look at them. Those are the typical exhibits.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just one last thought, and that is that, when you think about all those contracts and everything in the back, a lot of the most important clauses, the most important obligations, restrictions found within those contracts are summarized somewhere in items 1 through 22. That's kind of one of the fundamental purposes, isn't it? Is to take that legal language that's in the back, bring it forward into items 1 through 22, put it into layman's language, so that you can begin to understand what you're looking at. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have an attorney look at it, but it means that you can read it and begin to understand it yourself. Because in the end, you're going to sign the agreement. And so you need to understand it. And whatever it takes you to get there, that's the objective. They want to give you the chance to read it and begin to understand it.
Exactly. It's the reason that the FDD exists, is to make you an informed consumer before you make an investment in this opportunity, that you understand what it is that you're investing in and what your obligations are and what to expect from the franchisor in return, and all of the other components that we've discussed today. And it's an important document, and it's one of the nice things about franchising is that there is this opportunity to learn about the business way before you invest a penny in it.
There's a lot of different business methodologies out there. I really think that is what makes franchising unique, is the fact that the level of disclosure, nobody can predict the future. That's the crystal ball thing. But the level of disclosure in regard to franchising, I think, is so much higher than in most other business methodologies that I'm aware of, whether, the different kind of structures that are out there. And if you know what you're doing and you're willing to put the time and effort into it, and by the way, if you're listening to all 6 of these and we're at the end of the 6th one and you're still here, you're one of those people who's willing to put the time and effort into it. So kudos to you. And but anyhow, listen, thank you so much for your time. I know it was a big part of your day today to help out producing these. So we really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, actually. I've really enjoyed it. And Rick, it's a pleasure, and look forward to any other opportunities in the future. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. All right.